Welcome to Drishti Judiciary. This MCQ series for the Supreme Court Clerk exam will sharpen your accuracy, strengthen concepts, and help you master the exam pattern. Let's begin. Let's start the previous day's practice question. The question was, inherent powers under Section 482 of the CRPC can be exercised by the High Court, the Sessions Court, the Magistrates Court, or both 1 and 2. The correct answer is option A. Section 482 of the Criminal Procedure Code grants inherent powers to the High Court to make such orders as may be necessary to prevent the abuse of the process of any court or to secure the ends of justice. These powers are not limited by the provisions of the CRPC and can be used in situations where no specific provision exists to deal with the matter. Hence, the correct option is A. Let's start today's session. The first question is, A, being in debt to B, the money lender of his village, contracts a fresh loan on terms which appear to be unconscionable. This will be termed as fraud, coercion, undue influence, or misrepresentation. The correct answer is option C. In this scenario, the contract is unconscionable, meaning it is extremely unfair to one of the parties, as A is in debt to B, the money lender. The term undue influence applies in such a situation where one party takes advantage of the position of power over the other party. Undue influence occurs when a party uses their position of authority, trust, or influence over another party to coerce or manipulate them into entering an agreement that they would not have done under normal circumstances. In this case, the loan agreement is unfair and likely one-sided due to the relationship between A and B, making it a situation where undue influence is being exerted by the money lender. Hence, the correct option is C. Next, if a child is born 10 months after the dissolution of marriage between a husband and wife, and the wife remains unmarried, which of the following statements would apply under Section 116 of BSA 2023? A. The child is conclusively presumed to be illegitimate as the 280-day period has lapsed. B. The child is conclusively presumed to be the husband's child, and the husband cannot deny paternity unless he proves non-access during the period of conception. C. The child's legitimacy can be disputed without the need for proving non-access since the 280-day period is not strict. D. The law allows the husband to deny paternity only if there is clear evidence that the wife was in a relationship with another man during the 280-day period. The correct answer is option B. Section 116 of the Bharatiya Sakshi Adhiniyam 2023 creates a conclusive presumption of legitimacy for children born within 280 days after the dissolution of marriage, assuming the mother remains unmarried. In this case, since the child is born 10 months after the dissolution, which is within the acceptable period, the presumption remains that the husband is the father. The husband cannot easily deny paternity unless he proves non-access, that is, he and the wife did not have intercourse during the time the child could have been conceived. This rule aims to maintain social stability and protect the child's rights. Hence, the correct option is B. Next, under Section 25 of the Indian Contract Act, which of the following is an exception to the rule that an agreement without consideration is void? A promise to pay a time-barred debt, a promise made to a minor, a promise made in a contract for sale of goods, or a promise made without free consent. The correct answer is option A. Under Section 25 of the Indian Contract Act 1872, an agreement without consideration is generally void. A promise to pay a time-barred debt is enforceable even though it is made without consideration. This is an exception under Section 25, where if a debt is time-barred, the debtor's promise to repay that debt is valid if it is made in writing or through a registered document. This rule is designed to provide a legal remedy even in cases where the right to sue has expired due to the lapse of time. Hence, the correct option is A. Next, what does the term privity of contract mean under the Indian Contract Act? Only the parties to a contract can sue each other. Only the government can enforce a contract. A contract must be in writing to be enforceable, or a third party has rights to a contract. The correct answer is option A. Privity of contract is a fundamental principle in contract law, including under the Indian Contract Act 1872. According to this principle, only the parties involved in a contract have the right to enforce the contract or claim damages for its breach. This means that third parties who are not involved in the agreement do not have the legal right to enforce the terms of the contract or sue for any breach even if they are affected by it. For example, if two parties enter into a contract and one of them fails to perform their obligations, only the other party to the contract can sue for breach. A third person who is not a party to the contract cannot claim any rights from the agreement. Hence, the correct option is A. Next. Which of the following is true regarding statements made by a person who is dead, cannot be found, or is incapable of giving evidence under Section 32 of the Indian Evidence Act? A. Statements made by such a person about the cause of death are always irrelevant. B. Statements made by such a person in the ordinary course of business are relevant only if they were made under the expectation of death. C. Statements made by such a person about public rights or customs are not admissible. D. Statements made by such a person, if related to their pecuniary or proprietary interest, are relevant in a legal proceeding. The correct answer is option D. Section 32 of the Indian Evidence Act allows certain statements made by a person who is dead, cannot be found, or incapable of giving evidence to be admissible in court under specific circumstances. Statements about the cause of death or the circumstances of the transaction leading to death. B. Statements made in the ordinary course of business, including entries or memoranda made in the course of business or professional duty. C. Statements against the pecuniary or proprietary interest of the person making them, or those that could expose the person to criminal prosecution or a civil suit. Hence, the correct option is D. Next, C and F. And F invited C to have a fix of his heroin. Each filled his own syringe and injected each other several times during one night. Next morning, F died on the question of causation. C must be convicted of manslaughter. C must not be convicted of manslaughter. C can be convicted for the possession of heroin only. Or C is neither guilty of possessing heroin nor the death of F. The correct answer is option A. Manslaughter. Manslaughter refers to causing someone's death without the malice or intent to kill, often due to reckless or negligent behavior. Here, C and F engaged in drug use, and even though F consented to the drug use, the recklessness of their actions could lead to manslaughter charges for C. Therefore, the most appropriate charge is manslaughter, as C's actions directly led to F's death, even though F consented to the drug use. Hence, the correct option is A. Next, all except one is false statement about legal mens rea. A. It refers to mental element necessary for the particular crime. B. The mental element may be either intention to do the immediate act or bring about the consequences. C. Intention or recklessness as to the elements constituting the actus reus. D. Intention can always be satisfactorily defined. The correct answer is option D. Intention is a complex concept in law and cannot always be satisfactorily defined. It can vary depending on the case and the context. For instance, direct intent is straightforward, but oblique intent can be harder to define. Different courts may interpret intentions differently depending on the facts of the case. As such, intention cannot always be clearly or universally defined, making this statement false. Hence, the correct answer is D. Next, the court A. Can allow amendment of pleading any stage of the proceeding. B. A party can amend its pleadings at any stage. C. Cannot allow amendment of pleadings. D. Can allow amendment of written statement only. The correct answer is option E. Court can allow amendment of pleadings at any stage of the proceedings. The only condition is that it should be amended before the judgment is pronounced in the cases where amendment is necessary to decide the issue between the parties. Hence, the correct option is A. Next, mark the incorrect statement. A. The court must be competent to try the suit at the time of filing of the suit. Subsequent change in value does not affect the jurisdiction. B. It is the plaintiff's valuation in the plaint that determines the jurisdiction of the court and not the amount for which ultimately the decree may be passed by the court. C. If the pecuniary jurisdiction of the court is rupees 10,000 and the plaintiff files a suit for accounts and finally the court finds on taking the account that rupees 15,000 are due, the court is not deprived of its jurisdiction to pass a decree for that amount. D. If the plaintiff undervalues or overvalues the claim for the purpose of choosing the forum It is not a duty of the court to return it to be filed in the proper court. The correct answer is option D. Order 7 Rule 10 Court has the power to return the suit to be presented in proper court where it lacks the jurisdiction to decide the suit. If the plaintiff undervalues or overvalues the claim for the purpose of choosing the forum, it is not the duty of the court to return it to be filed in the proper court. Hence, the correct option is D. The last question is, presumptions under the law of evidence are presumption of facts, presumptions of law, only two, both 1 and 2. The correct answer is option D. Presumption of facts. These are factual presumptions made by the court based on common experience or certain logical inferences. Presumptions of facts are not absolute and can be rebutted by evidence. Presumptions of law. These are legal presumptions that are imposed by law. These presumptions are not based on experience but are established by statutory provisions. Presumptions of law are usually rebuttable, but in some cases they can be conclusive. Thus, the Indian Evidence Act provides for both presumptions of facts and presumptions of law. Hence, the correct option is D. Now it's time for the practice question. Under the Indian Contract Act 1872, which of the following statements is correct regarding consideration? 1. Consideration is not necessary in contracts made out of love and affection. 2. A contract without consideration is always void. 3. Consideration must be lawful, but it need not be adequate. 4. Past consideration can be a valid consideration for a contract. Send the answer to this question in the comment section. That's all for today's MCQ session. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Drishti Judiciary YouTube channel. See you in the next session. Keep preparing.